Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And today, I can already tell you, we are going to have so much fun. And, we're not talking about hardcore business things today, like how to design a website or things like that. We do that. But today we're going to be talking about your heart and your outlook on life. And because really, that's what it's all about. If you're not happy and healthy, nothing else is really going to matter. So we're going to have so much fun talking to my guest today. So please join me in welcoming Simone Knego to our program. Welcome, Simone.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here today.
I love it. I love it. Well, let me tell people a little bit about you, and then we will dive into this. So Simone Knego is the best-selling author of The Extraordinary UnOrdinary You. She is a speaker, entrepreneur, and mother to 6. Yes, you heard that, 6. You can see them there if you're watching the video in the picture there behind her. Multicultural children. With her bold witticism, larger-than-life personality, and fearless attitude, she is a powerful force for good. Sharing her journey of adopting 3 of her 6 children in foreign countries, her climb of Mount Kilimanjaro to raise cancer awareness, and all of the funny, scary, and inspiring stories that came along the way, Simone instills in her audience the powerful lesson that what you do matters. And it's the little things we do each day that make the most difference. So again, Simone, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. And honestly, I don't think I've ever heard anybody read the title of my book with such enthusiasm. So I'm gonna do it like that from now on.
Yes, it is The Unordinary You. I love it. I love it. So I always like to know how our guests got to where they are today, because you have had quite the life, and quite the varied background. So tell us how it is that you got to where you are today.
So I gave myself permission to change my mind many, many times. I started off as a CPA. I have a master's in accounting. I ran a horse farm. I went back to school to be a teacher, and I taught for a few years. And then I went into medical sales and another version of sales. And then I realized that where my passion lies is in storytelling.
Okay.
I love sharing my stories. And so one day I said to my husband, I'm going to write a book. And he said, can't wait to read it. And just want to remind you that you're not a writer.
Well, that was
He started with a nice comment. And then I said, yeah, I know, but I'm going to do it. And he said, well, again, I can't wait to read it.
Right.
And, he's always been super supportive.
Right.
We've been married
and he
for
knows what you
28
do. You're
years.
successful at.
Yeah. He's like, he doesn't ever doubt. He's just kind of like, that's a really interesting
Okay.
avenue. Can't wait to see how that goes. And yeah, so that's how I got to where I am today. And I really realized the power of stories. I think that was the biggest thing for me. And for a long time, I think I was afraid to share my stories or, was scared to be judged. And, it's personal. You're putting yourself out there for the world to discuss,
Right.
In general. So for me, it was, but when I realized that when I share my stories, if I can impact one person, then it's all worth it.
Right. And I love it, because that's really what your book is about, is, that as we said in your intro, it's those little things. We don't have to do these huge, massive things. Sometimes it's just smiling at somebody can make their day. And it really is so very interesting. But I love the fact, and I mentioned again that in the intro that, you have this wonderful family, and the book is in large degree about them and about the decisions that you made regarding them, because three are your birth children, and then three were the children that you chose. And I mean, they're all obviously very lucky to have you and your husband as parents, but six, oh my gosh, now my husband's one of nine, but I'm an only. And so it's kind of this it's always very interesting. But why did you decide to really kind of base this around your kids, and especially around the adoptions?
I think I receive so many questions all the time. I mean, we sit down at a dinner table at a restaurant, and people will be, they want to know, right? They're looking, they want to know, but they're scared to ask. And so I think it's important that it's okay to ask. If your heart is true, right? If your intentions are pure, ask the questions, right? Like, you want to know about my family, ask about my family. You want to know how, our son Ari, who is from Ethiopia, he was 4.5 years old when he came home. And it was important for me to share kind of his story, the why. And for me, for them, for my kids, when my kids read the book, they were, a lot of them, it's not stuff that we talk about every day.
Right.
So I think
because it's just them.
Yeah, it's them, right? And so I think it was great for them to read about each other, not knowing the beginnings. And but I really do think that their stories, and again, I'm sharing my version of their stories. They'll have their own stories when they grow up. But sharing my version of their stories, it's, if it can help one person look at adoption differently, or look at a family differently, or look at whatever, my son Noah, who is on the autism spectrum, look at that differently, then why wouldn't I want to share it? Because our life is about helping other people. It's not about us. It's about everyone around us. So that was kind of my goal in sharing our stories.
Right. And it really was fascinating to read about everything that you went through, and I mean, but one of the big things was, okay, you had three gorgeous, wonderful children, and then you decided, and I love this, in the book, it was like, we have more room in the van, so why not adopt? So, but really, why did you decide that your heart had more room, not the van, your heart?
Yeah, I would say that my heart would always have more room. There's just so many amazing kids in the world waiting for a family to love them. And we knew we could be that family. Our older kids were all on board. And if you would ask them today, they would say, oh, I think it's time to adopt again. And my answer is, okay, the minivan is full.
Yeah, no.
But they really do. And I think that it has opened their eyes. It has opened their hearts to the world. And they really see that there's a bigger world out there. And it's not just about us, and that it's about our families, our friends, the world around us. So,
right. And I love how they were very much part of the process. I mean, they were part of that initial decision, and with each time. But you also really involved them by taking them with you. You went to Ethiopia twice, you went to South Korea, and your children accompanied you and got to see really what all it was like, and so, I can't imagine that, and you talk about how, I was looking at this, when I was reading it, thinking, oh my gosh, what an educational experience for your kids, but also just to know how kind-hearted they were, and I mean, that is such a thing. Yeah, we keep seeing the crankiness of the world, and and so I think that's one of the things that I loved most about reading your book, was it was talking about the good things, and I mean, when little kids are saying, can't we adopt all of them? We want to take them all. I mean, that just, that made my heart feel good.
yeah, we have great kids. I mean, I'll say that across the board, but I really think these experiences have changed. I know that these experiences have changed them.
Right.
When we were sitting in Ari's family's birth, his hut, his birth family's hut, really having them experience that moment not only just the moment of how he grew up, right? So he was 4.5 years old and he grew up in a mud hut, dirt floors, no running water, and having the girls see that. But not only that, having the girls see his birth father kind of talk about Ari's life and how hard that decision was to relinquish him. I mean, that was a huge thing. So I think that it really it changed the way that they thought about things, because it was not a selfish thing. It was it's not, oh, we had to, it was, they were truly starving. I mean, there's not enough food. And that really affected our kids in a way that they saw the world differently. And we got home from that trip, and again, they're still kids, we still live in a world of abundance, right? In this country. And so not everyone, I'll take that statement back, but there was no longer that when they came home and they said, oh, we need the next Nintendo game, or we need this, it really wasn't like there was no needing anymore. There was like, if you want to get me something for my birthday, or I could donate it here, because they really saw what true need was.
Right. It did, one of the things I wondered reading the book is, you met the families, and heard their stories, and, are the kids still in touch with their birth families?
So for Ethiopia, we actually write a letter every year and send photos every year. We don't have direct contact, but
part of it is just so difficult. It's not like they have phones, things like that.
Yeah, it is very difficult, but we do send a letter each year and pictures. And then for Noah's actually from South Korea. It's like a closed adoption. But what I do every year is when I send Ari's letter and photos, I send photos for them to put in his file in South Korea, so that if his birth parents choose to come in and see that they can see, and they can see how grown up he's getting and how amazing he is and all of those things. So, but yeah, direct contact, not so much. And you know what? We've talked about going back and visiting, because I do think it's important for them to see. They're just not ready yet.
Right.
I said, you tell me when you're ready.
That's more like when they're an early adult type of thing.
Yeah.
And to go back. Yeah. But it also struck me when I was reading that, you were talking about how the villages, especially in Ethiopia, they truly have what we would consider so little. You were mentioning no running water, no electricity, all these things. But they still did what they could with what they had. They decorated as best they could. All these various things, and and it did make me think. We waste a lot here. Let's be honest. I mean, we all know that, right? And they were truly grateful for everything that they have. And we're like, I'm going to throw this out because it's just not the right thing today. And so, I think that is one of the lessons also.
Yeah, I think sometimes we go into a situation and think that we need to fix everything, right? Like and when I saw the true happiness, and they had very minimal, and to me, that was really an amazing perspective, right? To see that, wait, you don't need all this stuff. I mean, trust me, I still have a lot of stuff. It's not that,
Right. Oh yeah. We're not saying that we're going to, give all that up.
Yeah. But understanding that just because people don't live like we do doesn't mean happiness is how you feel. Happiness is your daily life. It's not about being jealous of what someone else has. It's about realizing what you have and waking up every morning and saying, thank you. Thank you for I am so thankful that this is the family I have. I am so thankful that, I get to go to my sink and turn it on and I have running water. I mean, there's so many pieces to it, and looking at someone else's reality and saying, oh, I can't believe I don't know how they could be happy like that. They are happy like that. That is their reality, and they're thankful for it.
Right. And the overriding theme of your book is that how we are and our outlook on life is a choice that we make. And we make it all the time. We are happy, we are sad, and we're not, I'm not saying, that we have to be Pollyanna. I've actually had people who have said, oh, you're so, and it's really funny. I can tell they're like squinching up their faces. You're so happy all the time. I'm like, and I mean, and I was sharing with you, before the program, I've had some challenges, shall we say. I mean, stage 4 metastatic breast cancer, had some complications, had some things go wrong. I'm on surgery 19. But it's like, okay, whatever. I mean, we laugh, we joke. One of the things, and you are married to a doctor, and so I'm sure he has people who do that. I'm like, they always come in. Now, what's your name and what's your date of birth? And there are times where I look at them, I smile sweetly, and I say, Anastasia Beaverhausen. I haven't come up with a birth date for her. I really need to do that. But
you do.
Yeah, and obviously, I mean, there are times where you have to be serious, but it's, you can go through life and think, woe is me, or you can go through life and think, well, that sucks, but now what?
Yeah, and I go with option 2 because we all have things that happen to us. Some things are more difficult. 19 surgeries is very, very difficult. But we can stay in that moment of misery,
Right?
Or we can move forward because we have one life. And personally, when I want to slide into home plate and say, I was happy. I was happy. I wasn't miserable. Trust me, there's moments of misery no matter what. That just is how it is.
Yeah.
But my friends, actually, it's funny because that you said that, but my friends call me Positive Patty. So if they're having a bad day, they'll call me and say, I need some help, Positive Patty.
Yeah.
But it's important, and it's important. I could stress about every little thing with my kids. We've had lots of bumps in the road. But I leave it as a bump in the road and move forward. If I put a boulder in front of me that I couldn't get through, I mean, so how do I move forward? And so for me, it's really looking at, okay, how do I make the best out of the situation, even though it might be really crappy at the time?
Right. And I mean, I tell people, I have pity parties. I mean, there are times where I'm just like, what the hell, something else, or I just don't feel good, things like that. And that is perfectly healthy. I mean, if I were always happy, that I think actually would be a problem also. But the key is that I don't wallow in it. I have those times. I whine, I whimper. My husband has learned, okay, is this she's just feeling bad for herself? Or we got a problem, and so, but yeah, it's, it is your outlook. Years ago, I worked for an oncologist. So it was really, so I worked for an oncologist and I worked for the American Cancer Society. So when I got my diagnosis, I said, oh dear, I know just enough to be dangerous. And then of course you add in Dr. Google and, but when I worked for the oncologist, I remember one of the things that he said was, 99% of this is your attitude. And even when it's terminal, that it is how you get through it is how you think about it. I mean, if you think, oh, this is horrible, I'm not going to survive, that's going to be what happens. And so, or even if it's just, they gave me the wrong order at Chick-fil-A. It's like, oh, okay, well now I get to try something new. But yeah, it is about those choices that we make.
Yeah. So my daughter, who is 18, she was diagnosed with Crohn's almost 2 years ago. And it was a really hard diagnosis. She had very severe disease. It's still not under control. But when she was
diagnosed with kids,
it's very hard with kids. And when she was diagnosed, I said to her, okay, pick a number of days, a number of days to cry and be angry and all of those things. And then on the day you say that we're done and we're picking a day. We're not saying, oh, well, I'll let you know when I get there. Then we're done. We're moving forward. Right. We're going to see okay, what can we, all the things that we can do. And that's how she's approached it, which is amazing. Again, she's 18 and she's still she had to get her injection yesterday. And, she was like, okay, are you almost done? Are you almost done? You know,
Yeah.
and then she's like, okay, I'm good. I'm gonna go hang out over there for a little bit.
Mhm.
You can watch me. I'll be fine, Mom.
Mhm.
You know, but I think that that kind of attitude is so important, and
Mhm.
for everything that we do in our lives,
Mhm.
because sometimes we do get so caught up in a situation that we don't know how to move forward,
Right.
and it's okay to be sad, and it's okay to be mad, and you know, we have to allow ourselves to do those things. We're not going to be positive Patty every day of the week,
Right.
but if we let us, if we let ourselves stay in that situation, you can't move forward.
Right.
So
Right.
we pick days, and then we say, okay, we're moving forward.
Right. Right. You know, and it's been difficult because of the pandemic. You know, and you know, and all of a sudden we were locked in, you know, all these various things. You know, it's and you mentioned this in your book, especially because you have a husband who's in the medical field. Everything that, you know, he was concerned about, you obviously have a child who has immune system problems. You know, I left the house only when I absolutely had to for about the first 2-3 months. And then I thought, okay, enough of this. I can be careful, I can be cautious, but I can't stay shut up like this. You know, and there are still things like I've only had 4 in-person meetings since, you know, and I haven't had any networking events that I have attended, you know, because my system is a little bit crankier than most. And you know, and I know people would be fine with me wearing a mask, saying, you know, keep your distance. But, you know, there are things that we go through. You know, I just came back, you know, as we're recording this, from a wedding. My cousin got married. We went to Minneapolis. I had to get on a plane by myself, which meant that the person sitting next to me was going to be a total stranger. So this is, you know, this is a little nerve wracking. Now, you know, I take my wipes. I've got, you know, I'm, you know, being all that. I've obviously got a mask on, all those good things. But it was so sweet. This gentleman sits down next to me, and the flight was an early morning flight. So, and it really surprised me that the plane was 100% full. In fact, there was a standby list, 7 a.m. going to Minneapolis.
Wow.
Okay. But so this gentleman sits next to me, and he's older. He's probably in his 70s, and he's got his little bag of his breakfast food. And he sits down and he says, just so you know, I have had my shots. He said, however, if it will bother you for me to take my mask down to eat, I won't do that. And I just thought that was the sweetest thing in the world. And I, of course, said, oh, no, please, sir, enjoy your breakfast. I too have had my shots, you know, but yes, please enjoy your breakfast. And, you know, and then it made me hungry because he was, but yeah, I just thought that was so sweet that, you know, that simple little act of kindness, you know, which is what we were talking about, was, I mean, it was just so moving, because we don't see those things. We see the crankiness, you know, and there's so many of the good things that are out there that sometimes we don't even pay any attention to them.
Yeah, so that's something that you will probably remember forever, right?
Right.
Like these little things that should happen more frequently, right?
Right.
And if we, and I think sometimes if we don't even realize that these little things are happening, which is what you just said. So all of those things, when you look at them, they make a huge difference in someone else's life. And sometimes we're like, that's no big deal. No, it is a big deal. You do something small for someone, and they notice it, and they're affected by it. And so I think about that all of the time now. Whatever I did, you know, we had something funny, like we were trimming our trees, and all of a sudden our neighbors had a better view, and they brought us over a bottle of wine. And I was like, okay, you know, you definitely don't need to do that. He's like, no, we have this view that we never knew we would have because you did that. And I was like, well, if you'd like, I'll just cut them down. I don't want to cut down the trees, but you know, like the things that you don't think make a big difference in someone else's life, they're huge.
Right.
And if we looked at those things in terms of when we look at ourselves and say, oh, we don't make a difference in the world, we all make a difference in the world. And it's because of these little things that we are all capable of doing every day of our lives.
Right. You know, and I think we get caught up in thinking it has to be a grand gesture. You know, we have to donate thousands of dollars or many hours, you know, all of these things. And yeah, some people can and do that. But it really can be something as simple as opening a door for somebody, or smiling at somebody, or remembering to say thank you. All of those little things. I love, like the whole pay it forward thing. You talked about in the book. I'd probably be the person that, they'd say, well, yeah, they ordered $50 worth of food. Well, okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I'd committed to it, I would do that. But it really is just, it is the little things. And maybe, it's kind of like your book, The Unordinary, it's those things that are kind of the unexpected, but they are things that we are doing every day. We just aren't stopping to think about it.
Yeah. I had a moment with my daughter. We were at the Starbucks drive-through, and it wasn't a good moment. It was a human moment where I was waiting to get into the line, and it was packed. So the inside wasn't open. So everybody was waiting in the drive-through. And so I left enough space so that people could go around me if they needed to. And so of course the line starts moving, and someone from behind me.
They cut in.
They cut in. And I lost it. Like, I'm like, what the, and I'm going off, and,
Heck.
Yeah, exactly. And so, like, I'm angry. Why am I angry about this? This is so ridiculous. So my daughter, I'm with my 13-year-old daughter, and she says to me, Mom, I think you might need to reread your own book. I think you might have forgotten a few things about patience and understanding. We have no idea what this other person is going through, So we went through this whole conversation. And of course, I'm like laughing hysterically at this point with tears rolling down my face, thinking like, okay, seriously, Simone, like, this is
my
so nice.
13-year-old just gave me a comeuppance.
And so we get up to pay, and of course the car that had cut us off paid for our drinks. It's something that I will never forget, because it was one of those moments of like, why am I so upset about something so ridiculously small that, and then she paid for our drinks. And so then my daughter said, can we pay for the car? Can we pay for the car behind us? And then it was a whole discussion about how many cars do you think will continue doing this until someone says, okay, I'll just pay for my own. But I thought it was such a moment of like that little gesture that person did for me, and my negativity, like, okay, that wiped that away. And it was a great teaching moment for me and for my daughter. She did the teaching, honestly. She was like, get over yourself, lady. But those little things, like that will be something that I will remember forever, because it just changed my whole attitude for the day. All of a sudden I was like, I cannot believe I just got so upset about something so ridiculously small that has no impact on my life. Like, move forward. So, yeah.
Right. But, it is important to note that we are human. I mean, we're going to have those. Now, I always have something with me to drink while I'm doing this, because, I talk for an hour, I might lose my voice. And normally it's this pretty blue cup that's, very professional. This is my favorite cup, actually my favorite cup. And I did it just for you today. So it says, I can't adult today. And and I did that because you talk about that in your book, right? See, I read it. And because there are times where it is just, okay, I'm just gonna go crawl in the corner today. I tell people, and I've got some memes that I post on Facebook, I can't adult today, I want a cat. I'm just, or bunny. I have one too. I want a bunny, and it's this bunny that's just like, again, it's, we need to give ourselves permission to do that, and to say, you know what, I'm not going to. Now, of course, the fun thing is, if we weren't adulting, maybe we should be kids again, and bring back that joy of life. I mean, my neighbors have 2 little kids, and there are times I just watch them, as they're playing outside in the mud. And first of all, I love that their parents just let them sit out there and play in the mud, right? It's, they wash, and, but they are just, they're so entertained by playing in the mud. And, and that really is kind of one of those things where I'm like, okay, and I was carrying on about this or that. Let's go watch the little kids play for a while.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I mean, there's moments where I'm like, oh, if I could only be a kid again. But honestly, when you have kids, you can kind of be a kid. You can watch the kid. Actually, sometimes we watch kid movies. We did the other night without the kids.
Sometimes you need a little Disney.
I'm like, we needed some Disney the other night, and but it's like it's this amazing thing when you watch kids, when you
Mhm.
watch them go to a playground
Mhm.
and they walk up to a
Mhm.
stranger and say, "Hey, you want to play?" And
Mhm.
it's like, it's amazing to be
Mhm.
able to have that connection as
Mhm.
children where you don't have those barriers. You're
Mhm.
not scared of
Mhm.
what other people are
Mhm.
going to think. You just go
Mhm.
and do, and you just enjoy every
Mhm.
moment. You enjoy, running around like
Mhm.
crazy maniacs, which for
Mhm.
me, I'm like, "Ooh, that's too much exercise."
I know.
But,
Mhm.
but watching them, with those interactions
Mhm.
and with the joy they get out of the
Mhm.
simplest things is really, it's what life is
Mhm.
about.
Right. And you mentioned something that I think is so important, and it's that, I don't care what other people think. And of course, that's one of the hardest things in the world.
Mhm.
It's funny. I've had several guests on recently where we have talked about, especially for women, the imposter syndrome. We have to be X. And it was funny because one of the things I was thinking about when I was reading your book is, oh my gosh, you are so accomplished. You have done so much. And of course, the thing was to not feel bad that I haven't done that, because it's your life. We all have to remember that everybody has that, it has their own lives, and not to really compare ourselves. But the imposter syndrome is there. It's, whether it's we have to be the perfect wife, the perfect mom, the perfect boss, the perfect employee. And it seems, and maybe this is simply because it's my personal perspective, that women do that more. And I've really been talking with a lot of women about leadership. That's very hard for women, because we put ourselves into the I have to be like the men. And so we wear our business suits. I don't have a business suit anymore. We do all of those things because we think that we're not enough. And of course, the truth is we're more than enough. And you say that in your book. I love that.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I'm working on writing a new keynote right now,
Mm-hmm.
all about what we're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
all about really looking at ourselves, realizing what we're
Mm-hmm.
capable of, and that we don't need to change who we
Mm-hmm.
are. We need to change the way we see ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And, I struggled for years with imposter syndrome. And it's
Mm-hmm.
funny because people would say to me, "Oh, you've done so many amazing
Mm-hmm.
things. You're so accomplished." I never believed in myself. I really struggled to see the value in
Mm-hmm.
these things that I was doing. And, there was that moment in time. And I talk about it in the book where I was
Mm-hmm.
sitting at this women's empowerment luncheon, and really I was feeling bad about myself.
Mm-hmm.
There were these truly inspirational speakers. They
Mm-hmm.
were. But for me, I just felt worse about myself
Mm-hmm.
afterwards because my first thought was, that will never be me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's ridiculous,
Right.
right? But that's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of that moment in time where I said to myself, and that's the whole point. You're not supposed to be them. You can't be
Mm-hmm.
them. You can only be you. Why don't
Mm-hmm.
you look at what you're already doing? Look at the
Mm-hmm.
amazing things. Look at your family. Look at,
Mm-hmm.
everything that you do. It can impact people in a
Mm-hmm.
positive way. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be you know, the person that has the
Mm-hmm.
$200 million
Mm-hmm.
corporation. You don't. You have
Mm-hmm.
to be you.
Mm-hmm.
And so that kind of really changed the way I looked at
Mm-hmm.
myself. Now, trust me, I still see myself in the mirror
Mm-hmm.
every morning. I still have to do my positive affirmations
Mm-hmm.
to get through the day. There's always going to be that voice
Mm-hmm.
inside my head, but I'm able to kind of
Mm-hmm.
squash it now because I do see the value that
Mm-hmm.
each and every one of us
Mm-hmm.
brings to the world.
Right. And we do have those voices in our heads, and the funny thing is sometimes those voices are trying to protect us, so it was, your eighth grade teacher who said, oh, girls really don't do math.
Mhm.
Or your mom trying to protect you by saying, do you really want to wear that dress, or all these various things. And then those little voices, of course, turn into little shouts, and they take on such a life of their own. And I think it's important that we do remember, sometimes they really were trying to protect us. But then it comes back to what we were saying. It's that choice. It's like, okay, well, maybe math is harder for girls, but you know what? I'm still good at it. So I'm gonna take that math class, or all these various things. And so those little voices are there for a reason, but we don't have to always be paying attention to them.
Yeah, and sometimes they just get so loud
Mm-hmm.
for no reason
Mm-hmm.
and or for not a real reason
Mm-hmm.
that is that it just stops us. And my mom is a great example. She grew up in rural Pennsylvania. Her mother had a sixth grade education, and her dad worked in the coal mines and a local brewery. And she saw a library for the first time in 10th grade. And that was like a moment when she opened that door that she was like, wow, there is a whole big world out there. And she knew she wanted to continue on with her education. And she worked multiple jobs, saved her money, got into the University of Pittsburgh, worked 3 jobs during college, and got into medical school. And she was there were 120 people in her medical school class. 5 of them were women. And, she grew up at a time where women
became nurses if they were in medical school, right?
Well, it's so interesting because I had a procedure done a couple years ago, and my mom came with me, and the nurse was saying to her, we said something about my mom being in the medical field, and she's like, oh, so you were a nurse? And my mom said, no, actually, I was a physician. And the woman who was the nurse said, I'm so sorry. I don't know why I would instantly assume. And so we got in a whole conversation. Woman means nurse. And especially from that generation. And it was such an interesting conversation because we do make these assumptions, but she had to work her butt off. And she was told that she was working in a man's world and that her voice didn't matter. And she got paid less for a long time, and she fought for equal pay and won. And all of these things where you look at, she grew up in rural Pennsylvania, and this woman made a huge impact by the little things she did every day. And we have to give ourselves more credit for what we're capable of and what we're already doing.
Right. And a lot of it comes down to what our internal definition of success is, and I remember many years ago when I went for my 10-year high school reunion. Now I had 32 in my graduating class. I think this year that school had 8. But so we had 32. We actually had 16 boys and 16 girls. It was kind of interesting. But one of the people that I was surprised, one of the organizers, right? And so we were talking about you do those reunions, you give things, who came the farthest, all of those various things, and of course one person said, well, we have to say who's the most successful. And even so I would have been 28 at that point. I said, I'm sorry, how is it that you're defining success? And this woman said, well, who has the most stuff, who has earned, who has the best job, makes the most, all those various things. And I said, I said, I'm sorry. I said, that person may be the most unhappy out of all of us. And I said, and more importantly, the person who is home with her 4 kids might be the most successful. But at the same point, it was very sad because one of my classmates, we had asked people, if you can't be there, tell us what you've been doing. And so one of them said, and I happened to know, he told me, he said, well, I'm an airline pilot. He said, I'm a captain for whatever airline that was. He said, but just put down that I'm a baggage handler. And I went, what's it? And he said, nobody will believe that I'm an airline pilot. Wow. And I thought that was so sad. And I said, well, you know what I do? And I'm the one putting the newsletter together. And wow. I mean, and now he's actually still flying. I mean, we're not that old. And he has the big international flights because he is so skilled at what he does. But that was a long time ago. And I still remember he said, just say I'm a baggage handler. And I mean, I was just crushed that he thought that we all, and I mean, that the sad part is he was right. I mean, there were people who went, yeah, right. No, he's not. But yeah, you talk about those little voices. Oh,
yeah. I mean, to the point where you don't even want to say what you do because you don't think people will believe you. I mean, that's so tough. And when I look back at high school, it's right. Like I actually left a year early. I did. I went early admission my first year of college. High school makes
you're a smart cookie.
But high school is middle school and then high school. Like it really gives you a run for your money. Oh. I mean, if you can have self-esteem after you finish high school, that's a huge accomplishment because it just it's so hard to
Mhm.
to go through those years. And
Mhm.
that's my big thing with my kids is
Mhm.
that you can't listen to that. Like this
Mhm.
is what really matters.
Mhm.
And we talk about stuff all the
Mhm.
time because it is such a hard
Mhm.
period of time. And there's some people that peak in high school,
Mhm.
honestly, and
Right. Oh, yeah.
those were the
Mhm.
kids that were like always mean.
Yeah. And
um,
that's the head cheerleader, and now my best friend was the head cheerleader. So, but the head of the captain of the football team, all of those. I mean, you always hear that they say those were the best days of my life. And I think, wow, that's kind of sad.
yeah. And
Um,
for me, they were not easy.
mhm.
They were,
Mhm.
I was not in the popular
Mhm.
group. I wasn't, and what actually the best thing for me was I rode horses. And
Mhm.
so I had my family at the barn that,
Mhm.
we used to go to competitions
Mhm.
together. And that was kind of my way of keeping my sanity, I want to
Mhm.
say, because it was such a tough
Mhm.
period of time. We moved actually
Mhm.
from Buffalo, New York to Gainesville, Florida when
Mhm.
I was starting ninth grade.
Mhm.
And my parents put me in a
Ooh.
private school.
Mhm.
Yeah, they put me in a private school where the kids had been together since pre-K. And I
That's a
was
little rough.
yeah,
Mhm.
it was rough. It was
Mhm.
rough and definitely kind of affected how
Mhm.
it affected everything.
Mhm.
And it was kind of that period in high school was like my beginning with self-doubt. And I
Mhm.
think it is for a lot of girls when I'm doing research for
Mhm.
this new talk. I mean, it's crazy. They said KPMG, also Dove
Mhm.
has done a lot of studies.
Mhm.
So 78% of girls by the time they're 17 don't like their bodies.
Mhm.
7 in 10 girls feel that they are not enough, that in
Mhm.
some way, shape, or form, whether
Mhm.
it's in school or with their family and
Mhm.
friends. I mean, these are huge numbers.
Mhm.
And I think the most shocking one to me was that only 4% of women worldwide consider themselves beautiful. Only
Wow.
4%.
Mhm.
And that's like
Mhm.
crazy to me.
Right.
So,
Mhm.
like, how do we do better? How
Mhm.
do we
Mhm.
talk to our kids so
Mhm.
that they understand like what matters is
Mhm.
your happiness, how you
Mhm.
feel about
Mhm.
yourself. And it shouldn't be someone else telling you. I had a story when I was in
Mhm.
high school, the boy that I was dating. He told me that I looked fat. He couldn't believe how many stretch marks I already had. I was like a
Oh,
hundred. Oh yeah. I was 120 pounds back then. I'm a lot heavier
you
these
were
days.
you.
I was really tiny. Like I wore a
Mhm.
size 2. And that I should probably have a salad at dinner. And I did have a salad, no
Uh-huh.
dressing, and then went home and cried myself to sleep.
Mhm.
And if I could go back in time, I would have the chicken wings with blue cheese,
And
just to
and s-
spite him, you
and
know?
smack him with your plate,
Yeah,
right? Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm.
And but that comment was like
Mhm.
the beginning of
Mhm.
me thinking that, wow, like I guess
Mhm.
I'm not skinny. I guess
Mhm.
all of these things. And
Mhm.
that's when the voices started. And
Right.
like, oh, and so how do we it's not protecting our kids
Mhm.
because it's, the
Right.
world is out there,
Mhm.
but it's
Mhm.
helping them realize,
Mhm.
really what matters, what's
Mhm.
important, and how to look at themselves and
Mhm.
say, I love myself
Mhm.
exactly how I am.
Mhm. Right. And I think part of it is that young man who said that to you probably had many of his own issues. I mean, and was projecting on you. And as adults, we can look back and see that. But, I also love the fact that things are changing with the media and things like that. I mean, no longer do we just see the size 0 actresses in things, and I always find it entertaining when they say, they're plus size.
Yeah.
And they're my size, and
The
I am
regular
not.
size.
I'm like, no, 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 no. But and now, of course, they're curvy, and and I love seeing, and of course, Dove, you was one of the first that really started doing that with their advertising. They were showing, and yes, they would have a size 0 in there because there are people who are that teeny tiny, but they also had the curvy women, who love their bodies, and to show things like that and to show them in movies and all these various things. I mean, it's slow getting there. I mean, you watch and it's still many of the teeny tiny people, and and of course I look at them and I think they must not have any fun at all because they're eating the salad with no dressing. They're all these various things, and I'm like, I'm going to have a second glass of wine.
Mhm.
Obviously the overriding thing is, are they healthy? I mean, that is the thing, because sometimes that does lead to other issues. But you know what? If they're just, they and clearly with men too. I mean, they have to love their body. I mean, they're not all gonna, have the physique of a professional athlete, maybe. And that's okay. They're gonna have the dad bods. I love that.
I know. Yeah. I going back to what you were saying earlier about the definition of success, and to me, success is happiness. And obviously happiness is defined, each of us define it in a different way. But that's what success is to me. It's how we feel about ourselves, how we feel about our family, and when we go through our days, do we make that choice to be miserable, or do we make that choice to move forward and say, wow, this is a great thing that's happening right now. Yesterday was a little crappy. Let me move forward. So yeah, to have anybody judge success based on the dollars in your bank, it stuff is stuff. How do you feel? What do you want? All of those things in terms of how you go through your daily life. That's what's important to me.
Right. And surrounding yourself with that support system. I think that's one of the big things too. I'm down here in Atlanta. I'm diagnosed with cancer, and it's like, I've only been here a couple years, and I seriously thought about going back to Colorado, and, because, having treatment there, for one thing, I could have been, with the practice that I had worked with. The doctor I worked for had retired, but, and I would have had a better support system, but my husband couldn't have moved. So of course, that was, the biggest overriding factor. But it was very interesting because my tribe is and still is, I mean, after almost 6 years, very strong. And and there were people that completely dropped out of my life. Okay, whatever, but then there were people who I didn't even knew I existed, who have been some of my biggest cheerleaders. And I always tell people, if there's something that I'm in for, I'm going in for yet another procedure, right? I'm never alone. There's that bubble of support. And, sometimes it's one person, sometimes it's your whole big tribe. But I think, and you talk about this in your book, is we don't have to do any of this alone. And I think sometimes we think that, especially, I talk with a lot of small business owners who say, I can't ask for help. I can't admit that I don't know how to do my own taxes. Well, I'm sorry, if you're not a CPA, you're probably not going to know how to do your own taxes. And so why not hire the people that can help you with that? And why not have your friends around you? It's, I went through a period, especially when I was very ill. I went into septic shock. And if we hadn't been 5 minutes from the hospital, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Wow.
I remember the doctors arguing about how fast I was going to die that day. And I remember thinking, excuse me.
I'm right here.
I can hear you. Now my husband says the conversation was actually a little bit different, but it was, pretty much that. But, and then I went through, I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want anybody to visit me in the hospital. And, because I didn't want him to see me like that. I mean, I'd had enough chemo that I was bald. I had an NG tube. I lost 50 pounds while I was in the hospital because I was in for so long. And, and I just didn't want people to see me. Well, that lasted for a while. And then pretty soon, little Miss Social Butterfly here went, nope, I need to see people again. And it was difficult. My friends would come in and just be absolutely startled. And some cried. I mean, and a variety of things, but, and I'd usually get 10 minutes into the conversation and then fall asleep, and I'd wake up and bless them. They'd still be there. But, we all have to do this. And, no matter what it is, whether it's running your business, going through things, we have to have our support system around us.
Yeah. And first of all, people really want to help. I mean, first and foremost, they really want to help. And asking for help isn't a weakness. It isn't a failure. It's part of being human, right? Like we can't do everything on our own. We need a tribe. We need a village. When we talk about the decisions that we made for adoption, we didn't make them in a bubble because, it takes a village. And so for us, it was really important to have a support system. And we do, we have we have many different support systems depending on what's happening. And, I have obviously with 6 kids and everything else, I'm busy. Like I
Mhm.
have a lot of stuff going on
Right.
all of the time.
Mhm. And a husband
But
that has a very busy, demanding career.
yes,
Mhm.
he is. And when he's home, he shows up like
Mhm.
he is completely involved.
Mhm.
So we're both like life is
Mhm.
busy, but what my tribe understands is that when someone needs me, I'm there.
Mhm.
I might not be the best at responding to like the basic, group text messages of,
Mhm.
hey, how was your day? What's this?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, but I'm always going to show up,
Mhm.
and they're always going to show up for me. And
Mhm.
that's what's so important. And I think some of my closest friends are the friends that I don't talk to every
Mhm.
day,
Mhm.
but when we get together, it's like we've never been apart. And to
Mhm.
me, that's such
Mhm.
an amazing thing. I just
Mhm.
traveled with my uh, best friend from college, and we try to see each other
Mhm.
once a year, and it's that moment where
Mhm.
like I might have missed the last 11 and a half months, but
Mhm.
for these 2
Mhm.
weeks or whatever it is, like we totally reconnect, and it's
Mhm.
like we've never been apart. So
Mhm.
so
Right.
nice to have
Yeah.
that group that
Mhm.
can. And it's, again, it's not, people want to be there for you.
Mhm.
They really do.
Mhm. Right. You don't have to be asking big things. I mean, that's the other thing is, one of the things that a lot of people ask me is, they have a friend, a family member who's just diagnosed. What can they do to help? And I tell them, be there.
Mhm.
And obviously there are times to not intrude, but offer to do things for them. And I one of the people that I had thought, just, it wasn't that she didn't care, but she wasn't there. And I saw her, probably a year after I'd been diagnosed and went through all of my big hullabaloos. But she told me, she said, I didn't know what to say.
Mm.
And I said, you know what? Hallmark has cards.
Mm.
And it's funny because I still have all of those cards that people sent to me. I don't know what I'm going to do with them. I mean, at some point, I'm probably just, I don't know what I'm going to do. And the gifts, I mean, I treasure the gifts. One of the coolest ones was from somebody, again, who I didn't even knew I existed. And it is a handmade teddy bear that her church choir prayed for.
Oh,
I mean, isn't that just like, oh my gosh? And I had 2 prayer shawls that were made for me, little things like, little token things like little angels and things. I mean, those are in my purse all the time. And so, you can do things like that, but sometimes it's just knowing that if you need me to run to the grocery store, let me know.
yeah.
And things like that. And I mean, yes, there are things like I tell people, depending on what's going on, there are certain things that you can do, a kind of a variety of things I said, but yeah, just be there. Let them know that you care. I think that's probably the most important thing about it.
Yeah, I know when my dad was sick, so
Mhm.
he was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer,
Mhm.
and it's been about 2 years now since he passed away. That was all. It was just,
Mhm.
my friends would, can we send food? Can we do this?
Mhm.
Can we? Sure.
Mhm.
Like, and thank you
Mhm.
for
Mhm.
reaching out. And I do understand some people,
Mhm.
they struggle
Mhm.
with it. It's uncomfortable for them. They don't know how
Mhm.
to deal with it.
Right.
But my response is like, you have to reach out. Like,
Mhm.
just say 2 words,
Mhm.
send a text message,
Mhm.
send an email,
Mhm.
whatever, wherever you feel comfortable, putting your words down,
Mhm.
just do that, because that way, the person knows that
Mhm.
you care. And you can say, hey,
Mhm.
this is really hard for me. I
Mhm.
don't know what to say.
Right.
Be honest, be
Mhm.
authentic, be you,
Mhm.
and just say, but I want to be there for you.
Mhm.
So whatever you need, I want to help.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, that's kind of how
Yeah.
we
Mhm.
approach things. And it was, oh, it is so powerful
Mhm.
when someone reaches out and says, how can I help? What can I
Mhm.
do? I
Right.
know I don't have the words to
Mhm.
say, what I want to say to
Mhm.
you. And
Mhm.
that's actually, I think that's like a super powerful thing. Like,
Mhm.
there's no words that can express
Mhm.
what I want to say.
Mhm.
But I'm here.
Mhm. Right. Yeah. Knowing that some people really just can't deal with it, whatever it is, and typically it's something catastrophic. They don't, well, you know what? then it's time to let them go. Some of the people that I thought would be the biggest people in my corner, no, I mean, they do not ask how I am, nothing. And, and it's like, okay, well, fine. I've got 400 other people in my Facebook group, and so, and I mean, and I think that's just that friendships and relationships change over the years. Our best friends in high school, just might not be any longer. And it's okay, because we have other people who take their place.
Yeah, I agree. And I was actually having this conversation with my daughter the other day, because she started college last year, right during the pandemic. Not an easy time to start. And this is a year after she was diagnosed with Crohn's, and okay, what do we do? And she's like, I really want to be there in person. I'm like, okay, you're wearing 16 masks as you walk around. But that was the big conversation, is that you'll meet people and you'll be friends with them for a bit, and then you'll realize that they're really not part of the tribe, that they're not, as you move forward, they might not be the right, and that's okay, right?
Right. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with either of you.
Right. You just aren't, it's not where it's meant to be. So, we had that for us too, when we moved to Sarasota 21 years ago. We had friends then. Some of the friends that we met then we're still friends with, other ones we're not. And that's just kind of, ebb and flow. That's how it goes. And it's, again, not a failure. It's just how we move forward.
Right. Oh my gosh. This is why I set a timer, because we have had just a wonderful discussion, and we're almost at the top of the hour. So I want people to know, first of all, hold the book up so that people can see it. So it is The Extraordinary UnOrdinary You. And so obviously it's, on Amazon, all those various places. It was, I read a lot of books for this program, and it was one of the ones that I enjoyed the most. It spoke to me, but probably because a lot of what I have been through, but it really was just, it was a wonderful book. And I think that many people would get so much out of it. So I strongly encourage people to check that out. But if they want to work with you, now you are a public speaker. I mean, it's been a little difficult the last year, but what services do you provide, and how do people contact you?
Yeah. So right now I don't do any coaching, but I do speaking, and I would love to come speak for your organization. I have, like I said, I'm really working on my current keynote is really about women. And it's funny because men will listen to it and they're like, wait, I want to listen to it too. Right. So, but it's really, again, if you have daughters, if you have a wife, it talks about the things that we need to realize. And I would love to hear from people if they read the book, if they want to reach out to me. My life is really about human connection. And so I would love to go on my website, shoot me an email, join my mailing list. I'm starting a new newsletter. I have a download on there for 30 days of affirmations. And
I signed up for it.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So I have realized in my life, the most important things are each other, that really being able to have, especially over the last year and a half, not having that direct human connection, that more than ever, it's so important for us to be able to be together, whether it's virtual or not, and be able to share our stories.
Right. I love it. I love it. And your website is Simone Knego, and that's SIMONE KNEGO. And so, I encourage people, because you've got all sorts of great information there. And so please, look that up. This has been wonderful, and we didn't talk about how you climb Mount Kilimanjaro. We could always talk more about your kids, and all sorts of things, but, so we will obviously have to do this again, but until then, tell us, what are your final thoughts for everyone?
Oh, my final thoughts. I really think that we are so fortunate that we have this amazing space. I mean, it's funny, since I started these conversations on podcasts, being able to meet people that I never would have met in any way, shape, or form. I've learned so much because being able to reach out to other people. So really my final thoughts is really look at yourself and say, I matter. I make a difference. I am more than enough. And the things I do every day have the power to inspire the people around you. And, we matter. We matter. Every decision we make can affect other people, and let's make it affect them in a positive way.
I love it. With that, we will close because can't say anything better than that. I am Deb Creer. I've been having an absolutely wonderful discussion with Simone Knego. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.